Bill Gates said, "I will always choose a lazy person to do a difficult job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it." What's a real life example of this? I knew a guy who had a low-level data/reporting job. He had several daily/weekly work responsibilities, including a bunch of reports that needed quite a bit of tweaking from raw data to finished product. But like I said, low level. We didn't find out until way later, but he had set up macros for each of his major responsibilities where he could. Once set up, he'd just run the macros to do his work, but then he'd, smartly, hold off on delivering the reports until just a little before the deadlines. He'd hit every aimment, and was seen as reliable. He also would complain about the workload, so people would leave him with that work. I doubt he did a full hour of work a day after he set up what he did. Eventually he left the job for one with better pay. But damn did he work lazy. Also, he was smart not to reveal until the end, because had he told them about it, he would have gotten a pat on the back, and would have been given a whole other workload, on top of maintaining those macros/etc. Dude milked the job, not the other way around. I know a guy who did this, but he revealed it. The company shared the macros with all the employees. It made everyone's life easier, but they also got an increased workload. The company made a lot more money, and this guy made none of it. He didn't even get promoted. My brother gave my oldest nephew $10 a week if he did all his chores without needing to be told or complaining. One day he gets home early from work and sees the neighbor kid tossing a bag in the trash. He asks him what he is doing, and the kid says he gets $5 a week to take care of a few chores. My nephew outsourced his chores. I tried doing that as a kid and got a slap on the back of the head. It was just my dad and I. We both hated doing the dishes, so they would stockpile. It got to the point where he offered to pay me $20 just to do them. Before I got around to it, we went down the road to my aunt's. I ended up offering my cousin $10 if he would come over and do the dishes. He accepted. I wasn't allowed to do that again. I plug clocks in at midnight, so they are already set. Trip the main fuse in the house at midnight to do all the appliances too lol. An older company had a person dedicated to data entry, which boiled down to copying and pasting portions of data from text files into spreadsheet and formatting into a report. The person originally doing this job spent a full 40+ hours/week doing it, but was not very computer literate. When they retired, the company hired someone with actual skills. The new hire convinced management to let her work remotely after getting up to speed on the job. The first week at home was spent automating the entire job. The remainder of their multi-year tenure with the company was spent doing whatever they wanted, save the 10 to 15 minutes weekly to run their program and to answer the odd email here and there, all while getting paid full salary and benefits. They actually had to add in a few errors now and then to make it seem realistic. An older company had a person dedicated to data entry, which boiled down to copying and pasting portions of data from text files into spreadsheet and formatting into a report. I've worked a few places that have people doing this. Usually when they retire, the job is given to some younger person that figures out how to do it in 10 minutes on top of the rest of their normal job. I'm doing it right now. Automated data cleaning in Python. My coworkers don't know about it, so something that takes me 10 minutes at most takes them 2 hours. Edit. For everyone who says I should share my code, I even set up a private GitHub space for my team. Some have taken it up, but others, including management, do not like it. I think they feel a little threatened. My coding mentor got hired in a US government position, and he mentioned being able to automate a lot of tasks in his interview. After the interview was over, he was contacted by one of the people that were in on the interview and said basically, "Look, we get paid such and such a year and only work such and such hours. Do the automation, but don't say you are doing the automation." Edit. Clarity. I worked goods in for an aircraft manufacturer as a summer job at university. Parts would arrive, we'd open them, and key in all the details into a terminal. That bit was long-winded. I discovered the terminal keyboard has ignable shortcuts, and set up a bunch of them for all the boilerplate such that keying in an item was about 6 keystrokes. Saved myself and my workmate hours every day, which we would spend pranking each other, other warehouse staff and staff at other sites. Made yourself more efficient and use the extra time to make your colleagues less efficient? Fairness balance meme JPG. There's a repo on GitHub containing code based on scripts that were used by a tech employee that his coworkers discovered after he left the company. Here's a summary of his shenanigans. Edit. Repo code is based on the story, not actually from this person. XXX. Okay, so our build engineer has left for another company. The dude was literally living inside the terminal. You know, that type of a guy who loves Vim, creates diagrams in Dot, and writes wiki posts in Markdown. If something, anything, requires more than 90 seconds of his time, he writes a script to automate that. XXX. So we are sitting here, looking through his UHM legacy XXX. You're gonna love this. XXX. Smack my bitch up / sends a text message late at work to his wife, apparently. Automatically picks reasons from an array of strings, randomly, runs inside a cron job. The job fires if there are active SSH sessions on the server after 9 PM with his login. XXX. Kumara Holsh / scans the inbox for emails from Kumara DBA at our clients. Looks for keywords like help, trouble, sorry etc. If keywords are found, the script shares into the client server and rolls back the staging database to the latest backup. Then sends a reply, no worries mate, be careful next time. XXX. Hangover / another cron job that is set to specific dates. Sends automated emails like not feeling well / gonna work from home etc. Adds a random reason from another predefined array of strings. Fires if there are no interactive sessions on the server at 8:45 AM. XXX. And the Oscar goes to ducking coffee / this one waits exactly 17 seconds, then opens a telnet session to our coffee machine. We had no frickin' idea the coffee machine is on the network, runs Linux and has a TCP socket up and running, and sends something like size brew. Turns out this thing starts brewing a mid-sized half-calf latte and waits another 24 seconds before pouring it into a cup. The timing is exactly how long it takes to walk to the machine from the dude's desk. XXX. Holy shit, I'm keeping those. I love this one. Can never find it when I want to tell someone about it though. Years ago as a student I got a job stocking shelves. Guys were carrying the heavy boxes, put them on the floor and bend each time to pick up the items to put on the shelves. I was maybe a light 100 pounds woman, and carrying the boxes was just killing me physically. So one day I had an idea. I put the box on a rolled desk chair and rolled it around. No more carrying and no more bending. Funny thing is that, instead of doing the same thing, most of the guys called me lazy and kept carrying the heavy boxes, just to prove how strong they were. Now they have special rolling carts to do the job. Screw lazy, screw strong. I would copied you without a second thought. An engineer spent hours developing a program so they could start the coffee pot from their desk and not have to wait for coffee when arriving in the break room. That's pretty much how the first webcam was created too. Lazy computer engineers wanted to see if there was coffee in the pot. Every year in the Canadian winter, power lines would fail due to the weight of the snow. It took many days to build up enough to break a line, so they employed a team to walk the routes and shake the poles to loosen the snow. One day they saw a bear shaking the poles and realized that if they could get the bear to do it, they wouldn't need to walk the route. So they gave one guy a bucket of honey and he'd walk the route painting the sides of the poles with honey to attract the bears. It worked for a few more years, but this still takes a lot of time to do. So then they had the idea of flying a helicopter along the route with a trained sniper with honey paintballs that he'd shoot the poles with. On its maiden flight the helicopter parted the lines and the downdraft blew away all of the snow. The flights continue to this day, but without the sniper. Typus and grammar fixed by u/br Thirdbird. Wait. What? Is this true? If so, perfect example, just had to Google it. I was invited to my friend's yearly apple picking. It was a full day of apples and kids, and filling a truck forced the idea. I'm lazy and suggested we make the process more efficient with tarps on the ground. We managed in 2 hours what historically took all day. We didn't even get to the picnic lunch. Essentially, I ruined apple picking. IG. What did the tarp do to save time? Deleted. Absolutely. I have seen many people who will simply pretend the work takes longer to finish because they know that if the boss finds out it can get done faster, they will get more work, but no reward of extra pay. Some workplaces will also make people dust or sweep floors if they finish their work early. Heaven forbid you just let them take off early because 9 to 5 and going home early but keeping the same amount of pay. Definitely not going to happen. I had a boss that wouldn't even let me leave at 4:47 p.m. because I was scheduled till 5 o'clock. This was just a little office where I did not have appointments, customers, or clients. My ex-boss gave me an Excel sheet. 124,000 rows Excel sheet. Had all the company customer data per row, twice. In some of those duplicates there was an error. She needed me to go over the list one row by row to check for mistakes and mark all the faulty entries I could find. Through 124,000 rows. She wanted me to do that using the arrow down key in my mouse. I thanked her. I sat down, invested half an hour into Google, copy pasted some parts of this formula, then some parts of that. Finally I had figured out the formula. I double clicked the tiny rectangle so that the formula gets applied on all rows. Worked like a charm. I stood up, got myself a coffee, talked to some colleagues. Then I went to my boss. She had anticipated that I would need 3 days for this task. When I was back less than an hour later, she thought I hadn't understood the task or maybe a follow-up question. I will never forget the expression on her face when I told her I was done. There were 6 faulty entries. A year and a half later I enrolled into computer science at university, where I will finish my undergrad this summer. Imagine doing it their way to find 6 ducking errors. 5G causes COVID-19 Epstein isn't dead. Reddit is China's bitch. Peace out bitches. Look up as a gift from above. I don't know if this is a true story, but kind of fits your request. There was a manufacturing plant that made toothpaste. One year for some reason there ended up being an unusually high number of empty boxes being shipped out. So in order to stop that from happening, the head of the company hired a couple engineers to develop a system to catch any empty boxes so they didn't get shipped with the boxes that actually had the toothpaste tubes in them. The engineers developed a system that, if the box weighed below a certain amount, the system would stop and a worker would have to go remove the box and start everything up again. The person in charge loved the idea and implemented it immediately. And right from the get-go the number of empty boxes shipped dropped to near zero. The head of the company wanted to go see the system in action, so he goes and visits the plant one day and notices a huge fan right by the assembly line. Very confused as it wasn't hot, he asked the plant manager why the fan was there. The plant manager said the workers were tired of stopping what they were doing to remove an empty box, so they just hooked up a fan to blow the empty boxes off the scale before the system recognized it was empty and shut everything off. So laziness led to a more efficient and cost-effective plan. Lol, that urban legend has been going around forever. Seems to be a different product every time you hear it. Back in high school a lot of kids used to walk through his park to get home/to school. A portion of the path went into the woods because it was just quicker than walking the actual trail. At one point in the walk through the woods, you had to go up this small but tedious hill. Nothing major, but it took like 10 seconds of hard work to go up it. You couldn't go around because one side was a small cliff to the creek below and other side had dense trees. One summer, a bunch of us got together and decided to just dig through that hill to make it flat. It took like 14 of us 3 good days to get through it. It was a hard 3 days, but it was definitely worth it. Saved 10 seconds of hill climbing every morning and afternoon, 150 plus days of the year. And it wasn't just us, but hundreds of other kids who took the same party every day. Sometimes you need to put in a lot of work so your future selves can enjoy the easy way out. Some future railroad surveyors right here. Walkie-talkies. In every job I've ever had, these things make your day far less labor intensive if used correctly. Good God, I wish we had these things. Spent 20 minutes of my coffee break at 3 AM trying to call the plant in an area with next to no service so they could let me in the building because my dumber left my wallet inside. Didn't get my coffee either. Does Alexander and the Gordian knot count? A complex knot that, according to prophecy, was to be undone only by the person who was to rule Asia, and that was cut, rather than untied, by Alexander the Great. To be fair, imagine you are the priest, and this guy just cut your knot. And he is holding a very sharp sword, and has a large army outside. Would you dispute the legitimacy of his way of solving it? According to Facebook parents, the ducker that carved a sphere out of a stone block, and rolled it instead of pushing it like the other dudes. What the duck is this? I ordered a ducking cube. The clerk was asked to bring 145 white papers into the office. He doesn't want to count the papers manually, so he printed 145 blank sheets and took them in. Smart. He used a machine that counts as one of its functions, but not the primary function, to do the counting for him. It's just enough outside of the box that most people wouldn't think to do it at all. The entire miscellaneous kitchen tools section at bed, bath, and beyond. I don't need an avocado slicer or a lemon squeezer or an automatic chopper / dicer, but lazy old me definitely puts them to good use. Ironically, these things were not created for lazy people originally, but for people with disabilities, and also very busy restaurant owners. Me. I automate chores all the time at work, to make daily routine jobs more easy. I write manuals with screenshots with arrows indicating where to click, or where to fill in what. Whenever I write a manual, I own that whoever reads it is a complete idiot, so that whenever customers call for the same questions again, I just send them to the online manual I created. No need to type it out again by email, or explain it again by phone. I have a friend who is a little slow about finding stuff on a new program on her PC. Screenshots with the pointer in the right spot is so much easier than walking her through it with words. I had to carry groceries into the house when I was a kid. I didn't want to make multiple trips, so I tied several bags to the belt loops on my pants to do it in one trip. Why didn't you just run your belt through the bag handle loops? Would save a crap load of time. When Carl Friedrich Gauss, the famous German mathematician and physicist, was in elementary school, around 1784, his class was assigned the busy work task of adding all the numbers from 1 to 100, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, and so on. This usually kept the class quiet for half an hour or so. 7-year-old Cole was sitting quietly with the correct answer, 50-50, while the rest of the class was just starting, so the surprised teacher asked him how he came up with the solution. He replied that he added 1 and 100 and got 101. Then he added 2 and 99 and got 101. 3 plus 98 equals 101, and so on. He realized there was a pattern of 50 pairs of numbers with each pair adding up to 101. And 50x 101 equals 50-50. I wish I had this gift, to be inquisitive about number patterns. I don't trust or follow my instincts enough in maths. One of my favorite stories from my youth was the tale of the man who was too lazy to fail. I got fed up with handwriting itemized suborders at work, so I set up a spreadsheet that you can just fill out. Then I got tired of having more than one program open and not being able to search within and among those order sheets, at least not automatically or easily, so I'm having our file maker guy integrate it into our greater ordering and invoicing system. I was frustrated at the pointlessness of sorting a giant pile of paper invoices from an unpaid stack to a paid stack every month, so I just used the accounting software to keep track. I became so irritated with having to fill out a multi-page, printed spreadsheet for every single order, sometimes just one item, 2 pages in, and frequently, there would be those pesky itemized suborders that I condensed the items into most used, put them all on one easy to read sheet, and encouraged my coworker to simply write out the more uncommon items at the bottom. Basically, I hate busy work, and paper invariably leads to busy work. I have tried to reduce the use of paper in our office, but have not been entirely successful. We have to have written order forms available, because sometimes the orders are coming in too fast to be able to type it all quickly and correctly, and have to keep some paper records for things like organic, FDA, and Easter audits. But all in all, I'd say my absolute hatred of filing has reduced busy work here by at least half. Me too. I made templates of our most popular items, which generally made invoicing easier. Then I opened up new accounts with manufacturers because we were buying from resellers. Our company has grown so much from me just asking, wait, why don't we just? Well, I worked in a graphics design studio as an intern. They mostly had me practice and do some basic stuff their head designers was too busy to do. One was a real estate ad. It had a few basic templates, but it was all kinds of scatterbrained. I would spend 5 to 10 minutes trying to find the right layer for all the pictures and had to mess with way too much. So I made copies of the files and made one for each template. I labeled everything, made it so the images on top of each other won't clip into the lower ones like the previous did. So on. You could be in and out of the template in 2 to 3 minutes. Showed my boss the difference, and he had this face of Welch's. He said the next day that if I was a graduate he'd hire me because I was better than the people sending applications in. In short, I made an overly complicated / unorganized thing the opposite, and my boss was actually sad he couldn't hire me. He said the next day that if I was a graduate he'd hire me. This is a strange attitude. I've never known any kind of art or graphics place to care one iota about degrees. Programming. A lazy programmer will think all the possible ways of doing a single simple task, spend hours of programming, and troubleshoot a program to automate something you can do yourself in 15 minutes. My greenhouse's watering system. I would spend an hour per day watering the garden, 30 hours per month. So for $50, I set up a PVC watering system in a few hours. Now I just turn on the spigot and watch while I smoke a joint. Put the spigot on a timer. At work, I go through parts and apply 2 different kinds of tape and 2 different kinds of weave. I have finally got the rhythm down, and now I do each part individually and apply everything at once. Everyone else goes through an entire order, just applying tape, then goes through it again to do the weave. I asked to use the big table in the back of the shop and just put all the tape and weave tools there and do the parts all at once. Normal rate for an 8-hour shift is $1,200, but I can manage $1,800 in a day, going at a nice steady pace. Edit. I can get $1,800 going at a steady pace. I've done it before, but I usually don't. Most days I go slow and relax, purposely only making $1,300 to $1,350 or so parts. It's just enough over 8 to get my incentive bonus. And, thanks to being a hard and fast worker, the uppers leave me alone at my big table in the back. They look the other way when I have an earbud in one ear, and they don't notice that I scroll Reddit or read a lot. Edit. I can't say what products we make. They are too recognizable, and googling it would reveal where I work and live. But are you paid by the part? Eating dinner out of the pot so there's fewer dishes to wash. Worked in a local adult education center. One of my main tasks was to make calculation about how many people enlisted for a course, how many of them got discounts, unemployed CG, how many men/women/age etc. That was needed to calculate upcoming courses fees etc. That was my only work there, and I hated it. This was in early 90s, so PCs were a thing in our offices, but I had no idea how to write a program or use a database to use this informations. Lucky as I'm, our center had an interesting policy. When you want to educate yourself, you can attend that class for free. And when it's during the work time, then this is work time, as long as my supervisor is okay with that. She was. So I spent 3 months studying database structures, scripting, coding etc. I told my tutor what I wanna do, and he helped me to write a script that grabs all necessary informations from the course's database, copy that into another database, and then I went crazy and wrote code that was insane. I implemented what if scenarios thanks to filters. At the end I was able to do my work that needed 6 hours a day within 15 minutes. I mean, before that it took e.g. an hour to have all the necessary informations. To have a how many unemployed single parent women does it need to make the costs of that course even? I had everything back then. Now you want statistics. How many single parent disabled foreign women at the age of 80 to 90 are needed for the next 2 years to keep the ornithology course running? Sure, no problem. Clickety-click, done. After that, I started the PC in the morning, grabbed all the data, ran my script, was done within 15 minutes, and then read the book I brought from home. At the end of the day I gave my supervisor several dozens of papers, statistics, predictions etc and said that was a lot of work and went home. My supervisor was super happy with me because I did so much more now and was super effective. My girlfriend will kill me for this but duck it. I hate taking a finished toilet paper roll downstairs to throw it out. Me just leaving the empty roll in the bathroom annoys the crap out of my girlfriend, so I developed this strategy. When there was only a few sheets left, I'd start using sheets from a new roll and leave the old roll with sheets still on it. That way, she'd always be the one to finish the roll and have to take the empty one downstairs. Edit. For people asking why I don't just use the bathroom rubbish bin, we recycle our cardboard. You're a ducking lunatic, but I like your style. I was an intern at a large company during one summer back home from college. My work 95% consisted of using SAP, import to Excel, clean data and generate reports, occasionally create some tool someone needed. In the first 2 weeks, after getting a hang of my responsibilities, writing all the Excel formulas needed, and basically automating 99% of my work, I was chilling. I went from actually working from 9 to 5 to maybe 1 hour tops a day. Finding, importing, cleaning, and reporting usually took hours, but with all the formulas it took 2 minutes of clicking. I then helped the other cool intern get his chiz set up, so we could both just chill. We could take 2-hour lunches, paid for by the company, and nobody said anything cause we were just getting so much more done than the other interns. OFC I helped for special tasks when asked, but those were simple 20-minute tasks building something in Excel. Overall, was the easiest / stressless internship of my life. What I'm getting from this thread is I should learn Excel and how to automate stuff. When Peter the Great was building St. Petersburg, there was a huge boulder needed removing as it was in the way of a road. Lots of contractors tendered for the job. The would use explosives to start, smash it into smaller pieces using sledgehammers, and then cart them away. A local peasant also put in an offer for half the price. They gave him the job. He and a few friends dug a large hole next to it, took away the excess earth, tipped the boulder in, and covered it up with the remaining earth. How long did he take? Digging a hole is a crazy expensive task in civil engineering for what it is. I can only imagine what it must be like without an excavator, or knowing what's under the ground. What if he hid more rocks? And moving a ton of earth isn't that much easier than a ton of rock. Really all he did was replace breaking up the rock with digging a hole. I have a mo of exercise to do at our year-end accountancy. My work previously got checked by another manager who spent over 3 weeks going over the data. Eventually she got shifted to another department, and that workload fell on me. Basically self-audit, and then present the data to the actual auditors. My previous manager was absolutely chiz at Excel. I didn't let on, but I did all the audit on a separate file using simple, but out of the way, formulas. Not only did I reduce the task from 3 weeks to basically real-time checks, no time, but when I was told that I have to perform that exercise every month, my job became a doddle. I didn't let on that everything was automated by SUMIFs, indexing, maximum values and range checks. Living the dream. Sorry if I rambled on. Close bracket. How do you learn how to use Excel to its fullest? If I need directions, I'm not asking a man with one tooth, I'm asking a man with one leg. Cause he definitely knows the easiest way to get there. Yup, if there's a shortcut, that one-legged ducker knows where it is. You won't be hopping fences neither. Do you usually have such an interesting cohort of people to pick your advisor from? It took me like 3 months, but I automated a data pipeline to extract data, clean it up, and spit it out in an Excel or PDF format to one of our clients. I walked over to shoot the chiz with the lady who handles my client and gives me tasks, and she told me we make 40k off them every month for that automated job. Duck, I need to go start my own business. As a developer at least, it's quite common that everything you create at work belongs to the company. So make sure your script doesn't belong to them before you try and start a business with it. Department. Sure, I could do that thing, or I could write a script and get it automated. But sometimes doing it takes 2 hours. Writing a script to do it takes 2 days. And many times, that task is needed to be done only once. XKCD XKCD. Water is super lazy and will literally find the easiest way to go anywhere every single time. Wait until you learn about the path light travels through. Light takes the path of least time. That's not hyperbole or anything. Light will literally follow the shortest path based entirely on the time it takes to get there! Exclamation mark. My boss put my name in for leading a project group shortly after I joined the company. I had no experience whatsoever about project managing, yet he still demanded that I lead the group of 12 people. All way smarter guys, tech background and shiz. These guys are like magicians for me, and with way more time at the company. I'm a business guy hosted for balance sheets, that's why I'm in hours, and because I quite like the field the most. So we started the first meeting. I asked for every owner's plan, experience, and ideas, gathered the different pros and cons, cross-checked with the budget we had, put on a time frame with milestones to reach, around 6 months, put in valuable people to consult at different steps. Why did I do that? Because I like organizing stuff and keep everyone on the same page and delegate to-dos. Got promoted because of the success of the project. I asked my boss why he put me in for it, since I never done anything like that. He said because I complained in the first week that most of the work has way too wonky structure, no clear guideline, and this could be improved heavily if we just take some time into it. And because I hated talking to others if I had questions and I wouldn't get a clear answer, like ask 10 people the same question and you get 15 different answers. In the long run this would make us way more efficient and keeps everyone on the same page. All because I hated disorganized work. This is me, but I have yet to find a job that really takes my frustration with the inefficiencies into consideration. One job did, but never gave me the time to fix it, just said they wanted it done and kept me doing busy work. So well done. Me. I'm a real life example of this. While you do amazing work you must work so hard. Duck no. Step 1 of any new job/task is workflow efficiency. But I'll let them continue to think I'm busting my while I surf Reddit. I work for the government, and the first few months were training. During that time I wrote a ton of scripts for manuscript Word to automate chunks of my job. I easily save several hours a week with them. These scripts could literally save tens of millions of dollars a year, considering there are 10,000 employees doing the same thing. But I have told a few supervisors about the software and nobody cared. When I was in college I had a job at an Italian fast food place with a reputation for its breadsticks. They came in frozen and needed a bit to thaw, so we'd take a giant 3x4 feet aluminum baking sheet, spread them out in a single layer with no spaces and cover it with a plastic bag, then leave it sit in the walk-in overnight. The next day you'd have to get a pair of tongs and move each stick to a new tray, turning them over, then cover the new tray with a bag and let them sit on racks for a couple of hours before brushing on the garlic butter sauce. This was tedious enough that you'd usually be ready to brush the butter on the first tray as soon as you turned the last tray. I was given this task for the first time one morning and just did not want to deal with it. I realized if I put the second tray upside down on top of the first one, then turned it over and took the first tray out, I got exactly the same results. Blew the boss's mind when I did the 3-hour job in about 15 minutes. I was given a $0.05/hour raise. Ah yes, $0.05 seems adequate for saving 3 hours each time. Programming away work is a real life example of this. It's also a nice demonstration of the whole purpose of programming. A lot of programmers here are framing this as cheating the system. But it's not a secret. If you automate half your job, in the short term you make the same amount of money for a much easier job. But when a big project comes down the line, your employer will be able to use you without needing to go out and hire a consultant. And you're also less likely to jump ship to another job, so your employer will find it easier to retain you with small raises and bonuses. This all happens even if they are unaware that your job is half automated, because they're always going to be pushing to get more out of you. I had a math teacher that actively encouraged his students to be as lazy as possible, defining lazy as actively searching for ways to do as minimal work as possible. His logic was that the way math is now, it could always be simplified and still work the same. Someone just needs to be lazy enough to find that. My favorite math teacher used to say that the best solution is the one you find. This is a case of ask a lazy person for a solution to handling their work. I got sent out to California on a fact-finding mission about the marijuana growing industry years ago to see if there was a market for the sort of R&C work we do, automation and controls. I set up meetings with some of the local growers and met with them, discussed their outdoor grow operations. Their biggest complaint was having to go to the grow sites to do various tasks associated with maintaining the crop. I asked them if we could provide a system that could allow you to manage those operations remotely from home. Would you be interested in buying it? Every single guy was like, duck yeah, if I can do it from bed while smoking a spliff I'd be totally on board for that. That's like my dream come true. So it turns out some of the automation that was developed for that industry was marketed to the inherent laziness of stoners who have an entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, it's how I'm working now, so I get it. My wife and I have a chore list. I now am tasked with vacuuming, which she gloated about not having to do because it is so time consuming. I bought a Roomba and now the house is cleaner than ever and all I have to do is press a button on my phone. So now vacuuming doesn't count as a chore and you'll be egging something else? In construction environments it's quite common to have a soft foreman/men underneath the actually person in charge. You basically find the individuals you know want to work their way up and give them components of the work, and however many people they need, they'll do it because oftentimes it means less physical work for them. You're still ultimately signing off on their work or settling debates/etc, which makes you the ultimate foreman or supervisor, but you know that you can egg the task and they'll let you know when it's done and everyone is keeping the schedule in mind. The good old assistant to the regional manager approach. I was working as a stock boy in a supermarket, and when we had to fill the milk cooler, people would bust open a 12-pack of milk cartons and put them in one by one. On my first day I just placed the 12-pack in the cooler and cut the plastic off on one side with my box cutter and yanked it from under it, and the look of the store manager and the other employee who was training me was pure bewilderment. From that day everyone did it my way. In Australia, explorers discovered a mountain that was taller than Mount Kosciuszko, which was thought to be the tallest mountain in Australia. Rather than cause confusion by telling everyone a new tallest mountain had been found, they simply named the new mountain Mount Kosciuszko and renamed the original to something else. I think I would dynamited the top off the new mountain. Did you really say that? /you/thesis Bill Gates. Now that I think of it, the quote's been credited to him a long time and has never debunked it. Has it really just not come up? Deleted. The fact that none of them done it that way before is very strange. Anyone mention the dude who turned a ship's course because the sun was in his eyes? This comment. Best of all time. Hopefully this hasn't been posted yet. Basically, in order to restart a server, they made a robot that would eject its CD tray every time it couldn't ping it. Thanks, I like this story, and I also feel sad for the CD tray reaching out for the button that was no longer there. Excellent. Basically every invention in the last 100 years is an example of how to accomplish a task with much less effort. The automobile being the first one that comes to mind. Me. One time I asked my boss seriously, why do you always toss me the difficult tasks? And he replied, because I know you'll get it done quick, so you can get your back on Reddit. Damn, he alpha brained you. I'm presently printing and wiring a safety switch that will disable my lathe when the chuck key is removed. It is a rule that the chuck key will never be in the chuck whilst any other activity is occurring other than tightening the chuck. Whilst I have never yet forgotten to remove the key, I decided that to ensure it is never left in the chuck, the machine will never start with the key removed from the switch. Why not have an actual key switch on the power supply to your lathe and just put the chuck key on the same keyring? I had a manager in my 20s who detested the fact I turned a 2-hour process into a 15-minute process. It exposed how much lazier he was compared to me, because when the higher-ups learned from other people at my level that I created the program, they took me aside and told me he took credit for it. They asked me how I felt about that. I told them what decisions they make regarding the manager's character is their decision. Just put yourselves in my shoes and consider it from that angle. They did nothing, and I took the concept to a competitor who invested the money into making the program more robust and proprietary. My name was line 1 on the patent and trademark documents, and I did well enough to semi-retire at 45. I credit Lee Iacocca for the inspiration. He went through a similar problem with higher-ups at Ford, and his answer was to take his brain to Chrysler, who would value it. I'm glad people like me have value in this world. I would have never known otherwise. Orange KD in wrestling. Most of the time the guy puts the minimal effort into the ring, and it's hilarious. He's starting to become a big name. YouTube. Was it your goal to become a world champion, or did it just happen on its own through hard work? My friend applied for a job at company that works on autonomously driving systems for cars. During the interview he was asked whether likes cars. His answer was that he absolutely hates to drive. He got the job. I worked for the state doing data entry of a sort. We got scans of forms that people had filled out, and we had to go through and make sure the numbers that the computer had pulled from the scan matched what was written, since it wasn't entirely accurate. So, the software we used showed us all the scanned documents and overlaid fields right next to any point where the scanner found numbers, with the number the machine determined was written already in the field. The job was essentially looking at each field and making sure the number right next to it was the same. If it wasn't, fix it. We didn't duck with any of the text, it was just the numbers. Now, these scans included all of the paperwork submitted by each person, including like a dozen pages with no data whatsoever. It was just the beginning of the document that the person read before they filled out the actual forms and stuff. There was also a section just after the middle that was several more pages of information for the person. My trainer showed me how to do all this. He accepted a new document from the queue and pressed the down arrow key to scroll through the beginning section until he got to the first field. He made sure the numbers matched and repeated this process for several minutes before excusing himself and telling me I could come grab him if I had any questions. I sat down at the computer and took a look around the room. Literally every screen I could see from where I was sitting, people were actively scrolling. Some were using mouse wheel, most used the down arrow. I accepted a new document from the queue, and I pushed the tab button. The program instantly brought me to the first field a dozen pages down. I smirked to myself, compared the field to the written text, and repeated that process instead. I did go back and scroll through that first document to ensure I hadn't missed anything due to a goof in the software or anything like that. Near the end of my second day, I was called into my boss's office and asked what I'd been doing the past 2 days. Turns out, as of day 2, I was churning through 5 or 6 times the amount of documents a day compared to people who'd been working there for years. My boss I was just clicking through new documents without doing any work and was very much acting like he had caught me red-handed. I asked if they reviewed the documents I finished to ensure that I'd done the work. He replied that they hadn't, but it was obviously impossible to go through that many pages in the time it took me to do it. I told him that I knew for a fact that if he went through any of my work, he'd see everything was fine. He pulled one of my finished documents at random and spent several minutes scrolling through it, shaking his head to himself, staring daggers at the screen. He admitted that this document was fine, but it would take hours for his assistant manager to review all my work. Can I show you something? Could you please pull up another random document of mine? He rolled his eyes, but he did it. I stood up from my chair, came around the desk, and I hit tab. He was looking at the screen like it was witchcraft. I showed him the field matched and tabbed my way through the rest of the fields, confirming the rest of the numbers as I did. I finished reviewing the whole document with him in less than a minute. He asked me if my trainer showed me that. I replied that he hadn't, but it was a universal keyboard shortcut that I'd been using since the early 90s. This happened in 2013, BTW. He just looked at me for a bit and then said he had to talk to his assistant manager about the whole thing before asking me to go back to work. Later, I'm heading out at the end of the day when my boss asks me to come over to his office. He fires me for not taking the job seriously and potentially causing delays to taxpayers due to inaccuracies. I actually laughed at him. after he got done with his spiel. And that's the story of how I managed to flummox several state employees with a highly controversial use of the tab button. Still blows my mind. He couldn't handle the fact that he'd been wasting so much time for years on end lol. One of my favorite examples is Andy Kim, and I'd like to preface this by saying that I don't think Kim is lazy so much as a genius. Andrew Yao Kim was a singer/songwriter who became famous under the stage name Andy Kim. He achieved success writing songs for bands like the Arkies, possibly most notably Sugar. After his success he coasted for a while until his record label dropped him for lack of output. At that point he created his own label and cranked out hits like Rock Me Gently. When they saw this, the big record labels then bought his label under the assumption that they would then profit off of the songs he wrote and performed. He then very shortly stopped writing songs and largely lived off the sale of his label. Work smarter not harder. I personally use the talk to text feature on my phone to get it to write essays for me. I just talk about what I want it to write and then tweak the grammar errors later. Work smarter, not harder. My girlfriend is a programmer. I've seen her coming up with the smartest solutions just to avoid spending too much time or energy on a project. That quote is absolutely true in her case. Programmers and software engineers are maybe the profession where cleverness and experience are most rewarded. Unlike many engineers, our output is entirely the product or our capability. We don't have to worry as much about the limiting factors of the physical world for most of our jobs. Because of this, the difference in productivity and pay for a mediocre SE and an exceptionally good one can be 3-5x. I mean, the original quote was made by Frank B. Gilbreth after watching lazy bricklayers move more efficiently, so that my brother-in-law spent a whole summer trying to figure out how to fix his sagging deck at the lake, which he could in theory crawl under and jack it up. It would have been a tunneling project. It's a 60x60 area along 2x6 boards. Marv. I sat there long enough with enough beers in me to come up with the idea of just cutting a square out of the sagging area about 3 foot x 3 feet, jacking it up, then re-screwing down the boards. He paints the thing every spring with a roller anyhow, so it's not like the square cut shows up. He thought I was a genius. I was just lazy. I remember reading about a Texas airport that had a high rate of complaints from people who had to wait a long time for their luggage at baggage claim. The solution: a further away baggage claim for the same flights. People walked longer, but complaints went way down since they didn't have to wait as long. Start of lockdown, my 9-year-old son was having worksheets emailed to complete at home. One day, left him at the laptop doing his maths while I made some dinner with my 3-year-old daughter. Walked into the living room with his dinner to find him asking the Alexa all of his maths questions. Polymerase chain reaction. PCR changed bio and medical sciences more than any other breakthrough in modern times, and it came about because a scientist wanted to surf more, so he figured out how to do a full-time lab job in just a few hours a week. Love him. Worked as a laborer at a nursery one summer. Daily tasks included manually watering 15,000 plants each day, put together a back of the napkin plan to build an irrigation system, and spent the next few weeks building it with some money from the boss. That system is still running 15 years later and does all the work now. I did automate myself out of the job and had to find another eventually. Couple years later got my engineering degree. I'm convinced engineers are inherently lazy people that will spend a disproportionate effort to make things easier. I used to work at car dealership parts department and most repetitively strokes for the same product like oil changes and such. Made a keystroke shortcut. Now as a forklift driver at a Costco I try to make sure there is something always on my forks going in or out of aisle. Unlike other drivers they don't. That common sense though. Deadhead travel with no load just wastes time. Then you have to go pick something up and come back. Why make 2 trips when you can make 1? It is the king of this. We have set up scripts to do tons of tasks for reporting and data manipulation automatically. We have been using one macro program for years that works flawless most of the time. It can recognize windows and screens and you can tell it to do about anything. It's called Macro Express. Way back in the days, when Farmville was big on Facebook, you had to harvest these fields, and if you found a pineapple field, you could make bank. It was a grid of squares, and you had to click each square to harvest it, and sometimes other players would jump in and start harvesting too. I wrote a macro on a hotkey that when I found a full field to harvest, it would take the mouse cursor, move and click every single square in the grid, so once it was claimed, no one else could harvest it. It would click the entire grid in about 5 seconds, where if you were doing it manually, it would take you about 30 seconds. I've also used it for voting websites, before they implemented measures to only allow one vote per IP address. You can do all sorts of things if you want to put in the time to perfect your script. I asked my husband to take out roughly a dumpster's worth of trash. He spent about an hour building a sled out of the trash and took it out in one go. Laziest man I've ever met. In 1927 my grandfather started his new job at DuPont on a Friday. His first assignment was to separate out a chemical that was suspended in another chemical. He was handed a beaker of the stuff to work on. Since it was late on a Friday afternoon, he did nothing with it, just stuck it on a shelf and went home. He came back Monday morning to discover that the chemical had precipitated out and was sitting on the bottom of the beaker. He showed this to his new boss, who decided my grandfather was a genius. This process, doing nothing to the suspension, became the first of my grandfather's 47 patents. I worked in a library scanning incoming books into the system. This required a lot of transferring of piles of books from one station to another. My workmate constantly called me lazy because I would not get out of my chair while doing this job. I don't know how many times I had to explain that's what wheelie chairs are for, and B, I was at least 3 times as fast as her at the same job, and this was in part because of the efficiency of not getting up out of my chair every 2 minutes. I was once set to test a certain piece of equipment on a ship. The test involved attaching the unit to a reader, then run loads of command line commands. Then, one would have to make a copy of all the text, copy it into Word, and save it as a real crappy looking report. There was hundreds of units, and they needed to be tested several times a year. We did about 20 to 30 a day. It would take several weeks to finish. I didn't know coding at the time, but always wanted to learn it. Within 2 months, I had made a program, even with the GUI, to spot faults with ease, instead of having to actually read the reports. The program could read 3 units at a time, and would automatically create a smooth PDF report, and save it on our server, named with serial number and date. The job was now to attach 3 units, then wait for about 3 minutes, detach and attach new ones. Basically 30 seconds work, 3 minutes break. I could now test all units in a day, though I would typically spread it out over a couple more days. When I left the company, I left the program on the test computer. I got an email from an ex-colleague a few months later, saying they were using the program on several ships now. There wasn't any manual for the program, of course, but it was so straightforward that it wasn't needed. I'm too lazy to study for a test, so I literally just pay a lot of attention in class, which is the only time I'm forced to learn the subject. It's been working so far. Edit. I would like to clarify that if I know a test is going to be really difficult, I study for it, then make a quick review on what I understand, and if I should study more, or I can already relax a little. Don't worry, I know how to learn. Let me warn you, if it ever stops working for a test, start studying for the rest of that class tests, because odds are it's not going to get any easier. I work at a company which, despite having a 100+ employees, doesn't seem to have one that knows more than basics when it comes to computers. Due to the pandemic, we've all taken up some chores to clock some hours. They've got me retyping PDF read-only files to a new Word file. Thus far they haven't figured out you can just export a PDF file to doc in Acrobat. But my schedule is now 1/3 cleared to do typing work. We had to hold a thermometer in water in chemistry class. It probably was only 20-minute experiment, but your arms get tired after a couple minutes, and you can't let the thermometer touch the bottom of the pan or it won't get an accurate reading. So instead of sucking it up and just holding the thermometer, my lab partner built a contraption out of lab books and paper clips to somehow hold the thermometer in the water without it touching bottom. It was the stupidest looking thing you would ever see in a lab class, and our professor even walked over and said if it looks stupid, sounds stupid, but it works, then it isn't stupid. My lab partner and I joke that he wasn't talking about the contraption, but the intellect of my lab partner. Sounds like Hanlon's razor. FS the German General Kurt von Hammerstein-Eckert used Hanlon's razor to ease his men, saying, I divide my officers into 4 groups. There are clever, diligent, stupid, and lazy officers. Usually 2 characteristics are combined. Some are clever and diligent, their place is the general staff. The next lot are stupid and lazy, they make up 90% of every army, and are suited to routine duties. Anyone who is both clever and lazy is qualified for the highest leadership duties, because he possesses the intellectual clarity and the composure necessary for difficult decisions. One must beware of anyone who is stupid and diligent. He must not be entrusted with any responsibility, because he will always cause only mischief. Oh my, you watched until the end? That's fucking awesome, dude. Thanks for watching.